If you are this video, then you've watched the previous ones, and we are finally at the interesting point where we will start writing queries within the different platforms. So again, if you didn't watch the videos on how to write queries, make sure that you've either started PopSQL on your computer or that you're ready to write that online on the different online platforms. I talked about two of them. I talked about Programmies and I talked about SQL Fiddle. And I'll make sure to repost the URLs for both in the description. So make sure if you don't have PopSQL within your computer, if you didn't install, that you at least write that on the online version. It's always better to have your hands on these and not just read, right? So first I'll show you a few things and then we'll go ahead and write the queries. So let's go ahead and create some tables. Now, before we do that, what is a table? Quick reminder. A table is a structured format that holds data in rows and columns. Remember we said columns are vertical, rows are horizontal. In a column, you can have a person's name, sorry, all the first names, all the last names, all the date of births, all the, attributes. And in a row, attributes for one person, one entry. So pay attention to the difference, rows and columns. So tables, before inserting data, you want to create a table with column names, data types, and constraints. So we will talk about data types. What is a data type? What type of data do you put in the first name and in the first name column? Text, right? What type of data do you put in the student ID column? Numbers, right? What type of data do you put in the GPA column? Decimals. In the birthday column, dates. So that's where we talk about data types. What is a data type? What are data types? So in SQL, each column has a specific type of data that you can put in. You cannot just, enter data randomly. You want to have a specific that type of data to make it structured. This is important for storage, for performance, and let's talk about three of the major data types, and within them, we'll look at the different types. So first you have numbers. Numbers, it can be an integer. So an integer is a whole number, right? Like the student ID we talked about, it can be those are integers. 1, 0, 4, 5, 8, 3, etc. These are whole numbers. You also have decimal numbers. Decimal numbers, for example, the GPA or the pricing, for example, $99.99, 2.4 or 4.0 GPA, etc. So numbers with decimals, for example, 4.5, etc. Now, M and N stand for something there. M is the total number of digits that you can give to the number, like before and after the decimal. And N is the number of digits after the decimal. So obviously, N as in Nancy should be less than M as in Monday. So that's a decimal, and we are going to create a few, so you will see how that works. So for example, if you have a column called discount, or we had one called GPA, but suppose you have a column called discount, and you create it with the keyword decimal 42. This means that it can take 4 digits in total and 2 digits after the dot. So the biggest value will be 99.9, and you can have any other value within that frame. Other types of data we have text data. Text, so this is typically probably the most common one. Variable length text. So the first one is varchar, and M is a character limit. So typically for names, I like to use like 15 or 20. So 15 for first name, 15 for last name, or more or less, depending on how you want to do it. And so that's varchar. So variable length text or variable characters. So it can typically be used for names, for addresses, and M is a character limit. If you think that people have very long names, you can say varchar 30. If you think that they're very short names, or maybe the sex, just the first letter, you can say 1, right? And blob stores large data, like large binary data, like images or files. So these are blob is for very large data. Then you have date and time. In date and time, date specifically stores dates in the year, month, date format. Meanwhile, timestamp adds time as well. Year, month, date, hour, minute, second. So SQL keywords are written in uppercase by convention. Remember we talked about select, insert, delete, etc. Those keywords are typically written in uppercase by convention. So you don't have to write it in uppercase, but it's good practice to do that. And SQL keywords, SQL commands end with a semicolon. So when you write a command, it has to end with a semicolon. Now, how do you create a table? You create a table with the syntax create table and your table name. If you want to create a table of employees, create table employees. For students, create table students, and so and so. So create table, this will typically be your first command. Now remember, we had a student table. So we are going to create a student table and work with this. Now to create the student table, the command will be create table student, you open the parenthesis, then student ID integer, int. So that's your first column. First column, student ID. Then first name, varchar 20. So what you're saying, what you're telling SQL is, I want a column called first name, and it will take a maximum of 20 characters. You can change the 20 to 30 to 40 depending on how long the first names are. But keep in mind that this is space that you're reserving in the computer. So it's typically good to go with a realistic number, for to save space in your computer. Last name, you're telling the same thing. I want a limit of 20 characters for last names. Birth date, you want a date data type. Sex, varchar 1, so only one character, F or M. GPA, decimal, 3 and 2. What does that mean? It can take a total of 3 digits and 2 digits after the decimal. So the first digit will always be before the decimal. So it can only be a GPA. And then the primary key, you're defining the primary key here. The primary key is the student ID. So you see how each of them are. And now let's go ahead. So this will be your columns. As you see here, this will be your columns. So let's go ahead and create one within PopSQL. So here's PopSQL opened, and I want to create the student table. And the command I showed you, I will post that in the description. So these are the different columns that we talked about. For first name, you want it to be a varchar that can take a maximum of 20 characters. For sex, you can only take 1 character, etc. Just like we just explained. And we should have this table. So to create this table, you can either click on run, that will create your table, or if you're on Mac, you hit Command Enter, and that will also, this is a shortcut that you can get used to. For Windows users, I think it will be Control Enter. So if you hit Command Enter, you see here on the right, SQL tells you success. Now, you didn't ask SQL to show you a table, right? You just said create table. That's why, it's created. Now, if you want to see the table, that will be on the future steps. Now, how can you view the content of the table you created? This is where we go and view tables. So to check the details of your table to make sure that everything was right, you use the keyword describe. For example, describe student. Student is the name of the table that we created. And as you see, as convention, keep them typically uppercase for the SQL keyword. So describe student. So let's go ahead. I like to keep a space between all my commands. You go ahead and you type describe student, and don't forget your semicolon. And then you hit your control enter or command enter. And now there you go. It's describing your table. So your table has, these are the fields, the different columns. This is the type of data that each column can take. And then null, it says here no. So your student ID is your primary key, so it cannot be null. Remember, the primary key cannot be null. So, but the rest can be. Now there are ways to change these, but for starters, here we go. So you're describing your table. You want to see what it looks like, what it contains. Now, if you want to delete a table and its data, you use the keyword drop. So if you want to clear that table, to delete that table, you use the keyword drop table student. Now, I'm not going to do it for obvious reasons because we have to do more operations, but you can do it and create another table. To delete the table, you use the keyword drop table student. So on another line, always in the new line, drop table student. Like I said, I'm not going to run this because we are going to do more operations, but you can do it and recreate another table if you want. Drop table permanently deletes the table and cannot be undone. So once you use this command, you cannot undo it. It deletes the table and it cannot be undone. So pay attention if you want to use this drop table command. Now to modify a table, you can modify an existing table to add a new column. So your table already exists and now you want to add columns. You use a keyword alter. So alter table, the name of the table, add a column name, and then the data type you want to add. So imagine that we want to add a zip code to the table of students. So all our students, we didn't have zip codes for them, and now we want to create a column and add a zip code column for all of them. So what does a zip code have? It can take 5 characters. So int 5, that's, you're setting it to 5 characters maximum. So what does it do? First, you have your table like that, and then eventually you will add the zip code column. So this is what it will look like before and after. So that's what your table will look like. So you're modifying the table. To delete the column, you simply use the drop keyword, drop column. So alter table student, and then you remove the column or you drop column zip code. So this is the keyword that you can use. Now it's always good practice to create all the required columns as you're creating your table so that you don't get confused after. So because if you delete the column after, this is what it will look like and you will get back to the original version. Now it's good practice to always create all your columns when you start so that you don't get confused along the line. So let's go ahead and try to modify that table, add the zip code column and delete it. So first, I'm going to alter table student, add zip code. I'm going to add that zip code column. So alter table student, add this column, give it integers and maximum value of 5. So I do that, and then I say again, describe student. I copy that, go to a new line, describe, and it's going to show me now that there is a new column called zip code that I added. It can take integers and it's not null. And now to delete that, I do the command, I enter the command alter table student drop column. So this time it's not add, but drop column, this specific column, zip code. And now if I describe it once more, just to verify, you'll see that it was dropped. So it's not here anymore. Previously, it was here. And on the most recent one, it's not there anymore. Now, if you are using the online browsers to write your queries, it will pretty much be the same thing. To create a student, the student table, you enter that command, you run your SQL, successfully created. So this is your table here. However, the result set is empty because what have we done so far? We only created the table. We didn't do anything additional. And if you take a look at the bottom right, you will see that this is our student table. It's empty. You have a first name, last name, columns, but we haven't added any values inside. So in the next videos, we are going to add values into table, retrieve values, modify, and do more. So with that said, let's proceed.
How'd it go? Well, I hope you learned something new. Make sure to follow us on all our social media, and more importantly, make sure to check out our website at cybermuk.com. Check us out on our next course. Can't wait to see you there.